In this video, we're looking at data acquisition using the Promark 3 dGPS. I tend to use the mobile mapping app. It's by far the most simple way of collecting data, visualizing it, and accessing it. On occasion, when you open the app, whilst you might expect to see satellites, sometimes you don't. So restart the application, and oftentimes the satellites appear, just like what happened here in this example. Here you can see that we have around about 7 satellites. More are coming into the sky as we continue. You can use the nav button to switch between different displays. For example, the map display where you can zoom in and out. We've got bearing 2, speed 2, we've got outputs of position and so on. But by far the most important key that we need to use is menu. You can go into menu and then select setup. We can change a lot of settings within the GPS system. Most vital is to ensure that you've got your antenna height correct and that you've selected the correct antenna that you're going to use. With this particular GPS, I'm using the NAP 100 antenna. So once you've done that, just press escape to exit, and you can use the log button to create a new dGPS job. Give it a good name that you can find when you've finished your job. We select the feature library generic and post-processing job mode. Once you're in here, you can see that we've got new feature, point line area grid, number of satellites, PODP, and the solution. So all of these different options allow us to see how the GPS is performing. So for this particular job, I'm going to select the point feature, then click log. I'll change the name to give it a comment, just PT1.1, and then we'll leave it logging for as long as we possibly can. Time and point there, showing about 12 seconds. So, we come back, we can click done. That point has been saved. And then if we click done again and close job, allows us to exit the login application, and then we can use that particular data when we get back to the lab. So, turn the GPS off, and then we'll head back over to the computer. So returning to the lab, we're now going to download our data from the SD card that we've removed from the mobile mapper. So I've inserted the SD card into my card reader within my computer, and here we can see the testu.mmj mobile mapper job file. We've also got this R00 file, which is the raw data file that we need for post-processing. If you do not see the R00 file, then that indicates that you did not enable post-processing on the GPS. So it hasn't logged that data, so you won't be able to undertake a differential correction as part of your data workflow. So once we've got our files here, what we need to do is we need to mimic downloading the data from the GPS. And that process will allow the R00 file to be extracted. It's essentially a zip file to be extracted into its component parts for you. So I tend to create a small directory structure. The first one is just the main folder that we're going to store our subfolders in. I'm going to create a row, which is just the data that we collected, and we download that straight from the SD card. Okay, we can now close down the SD card, and we're only going to work on this data in here. So now we're going to have a transfer, and I'm also going to create a folder called export. So we've now got our raw data here. We've got a subfolder called transfer, and we've got an export folder. All that remains is to open up the correct version of Mobile Mapper Office, which we use to undertake the post-processing job. So as I said earlier, the first thing we need to do is just transfer the data. We use that using this icon here. Drop down and download from GPS, but the GPS does not need to be connected to the computer. So we just click download from GPS. And navigate here to my raw folder, which is on my desktop. YouTube tutorial and raw, and you can see our file here. I'm going to navigate on the other side to my transfer folder, the folder that I just created in here. All I'm going to do is just drag my job file across here. You saw very briefly there that window come up as it dragged it across. That indicates that some processing was done, and we can see a difference in the file size. That indicates to me that that was a successful transfer. So we just close down the mobile mapper transfer window, and you see that we are immediately loaded into a display. And we can see the point that we collected during our initial test, and we can click that, and we can see some information here. We can see that correction currently uncorrected. Vitally at the bottom we can see this here, this time bar. This basically shows how long the GPS was running in total and logging satellites that it could see. And that time bar is what allows us to undertake a differential correction process. If you don't see the time bar after you've done the transfer, then it's highly likely that you failed to select the post-processing option when you were setting up your job on the GPS. So we can see our test view. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to add a reference station. Now there's several different ways that we can do it. The first one is that we can add reference station from a second GPS that we have, maybe another Promark or some other system that logs raw data. We can share the cause site, or we can download a reference station from cause. Now cause is just essentially a network of different GPS stations that are logging around the world, and we can use these as our correction for our uncorrected dGPS data. I'm going to just click this icon here, download reference station from internet. I tend to use the IGS daily 30-second raw data, and I'm using MORP, M-O-R-P, which is MORPF. If you just scroll down here, you can see that there are many stations. You really want to find one that's reasonably close to your particular survey location. You wouldn't need to change the time zone unless you've changed the GPS settings, and time and that date, etc. all automatically filled in. And then the target path will download the data into this area here. Now you may find that you get an error if you try and download data very soon after you've done your survey. You usually have to wait for at least 1 day for the server data to be updated with the GPS data from each individual station. So we click download, and we can see we're getting okay, and then download complete, click close to proceed. Okay. So we can now see our display has changed here at our initial point. There's MORPF, but you can see it's quite some distance away from our base station. So the biggest issue here is that it might not see as many of the same satellites that we see in our particular location, which would reduce the accuracy of our dGPS correction. You can see that our time bar has gone green here, indicating that there is sufficient overlap with the reference station to allow some correction to take place. We then can use this process data button here that will correct our data. See our GPS positions have been differentially corrected. Click OK. So if we zoom into our point here, click it, you see now we've got an accuracy estimation. Okay. Now I have relatively low accuracy here because I was using a GPS from my office window, so I couldn't see the full sky. We logged only for 1 minute and 50 seconds, and I only saw 7 satellites. So there's not much information that we can actually work with. But you can see that that correction is now post-processed. We have an error that allows us to take that into account. And we have corrected height, longitude, latitude and longitude. And we can use those to better understand where our points are. So that's how we differentially correct within Mobile Mapper Office with data collected by a Promark 3 dGPS.